Welcome back to another episode of the Rundown. It's a good day so far. It's Friday. It's very solid. We're recording this on Thursday, but this ain't going to get released till Friday. So hopefully you're excited for the weekend. It's myself, Joe. Brandon is also on this Zoom call as always. We were going to try to get some people on this time, but some scheduling conflicts. So next week, try to expect that. But either way, Brandon, forget everything else that was going on, the qualms, everything, your fan from your computer going on in the background. How are you? Are you excited for this weekend?
I'm excited to see a spaceship launch with my fan literally in my computer is about to blow up, but it's
I was
okay.
say you're
We
going
got
to
a
be taking
backup.
off here in a second.
Yeah, so apologies if you hear any buzzing noise from my fan that's trying to be just on absolute level 10 when we don't need that in this episode. But obviously, it's very busy for all the coaches right now. We had a couple that we're going to plan on coming on the show. Had some fallouts with scheduling, of course, rescheduled games. Some teams playing 3 games this week now due to some of the cancellations of rain earlier on. Obviously, we had tornadic activity in the state of Michigan that really thwarted everything earlier on this week. So a lot of those games getting postponed. So we will get interviews on. We promise we're working forward. But also, Joe, the new intro tag. I mean, we already saw it go by, but I mean, I'm digging it so far. It looks pretty sweet.
Yeah, expect some big improvements to the rundown. We're going to kind of change the editing style a little bit and just make it kind of more immersive for everybody, especially this summer that's coming up. We're going to be covering some really cool stuff too when it comes to sports around the Big Rapids and kind of mid Michigan area. So we're very excited for that. Big changes coming. But the constant right now is CSAA baseball and softball. So let's start talking about that. We'll go into baseball right now. We chatted very briefly before we pressed record. It looks like right now Big Rapids is going to be the team that is going to lock it up. Reed City with, I think you said the split against Tri-County kind of takes them out of the running for it. And I think Newaygo as well right now is kind of out of it as well. So I think Big Rapids, it's their conference to lose at the moment, which is huge for Big Rapids fans. I think this is what their second year in a row, third year in a row that they've are slated to win it, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, right now they're rolling, and especially for some of these teams, I mean, we're seeing some good ball out of guys or teams like Chip Hills. They got a really big win in extra innings against Kent City. I mean, you look at that team; they're certainly playing some good fundamental baseball, and they've been able to really squeak out a couple of big wins and it kept it going for Reed City. I mean, they got really talented players on this team. Obviously, we mentioned Max Hammond. The pitching depth is where they're struggling a little bit, and that's where game two they've gotten a lot of splits, especially because they can beat a lot of these teams that we've seen when we've played Grant, when they've played some of the other teams. We're going to see them play Big Rapids next week, which is going to be a big rivalry game. But a lot of these games that you're seeing them, especially I think Morley also as well, you saw them play really well game one, lights out pitching from Max Hammond, and then game two just kind of became a little bit of a struggle. And that's really been the MO for them so far because they're a really good team. And that's something that, especially going into postseason, that's going to be very interesting to watch, see what Coach Granis does, especially with some of the athletes that he has, maybe getting more aggressive with the bats. I mean, you got some athletes on that team, especially. I mean, Landon Jackson, name a few, Spencer Hansen. You got a lot of really good athletes with a lot of speed as well, Zach Erickson. So you look at a lot of the ability that they have on the base paths to be very interesting. But, I mean, Chip Hills right now, I think it might be the team to watch going into second. Obviously, Grant, they're going to be taking on Big Rapids here as of yesterday as you're hearing this, today as we're recording this. And that's a really big game for them. I mean, Coach Cheeseborough really has that team rolling. And it looks like right now the hitting for them is starting to pick up a little bit, and they're starting to really cut down on the errors. And that's really something that they kind of struggled with early on this season. And now they're kind of peaking at the right time. So they're going to be an interesting team to watch here coming up as well.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned that. Especially you see a solid amount of like 11-6, 12-5 records throughout, kind of sprinkled through the CSA standings, which is very impressive. But it's just the tough thing is Big Rapids is I think sitting at what 18-2, 16-2 at this point. So I'm very interested to see. I mean, like you said, though, Central Montcalm is going to be a team to look out for in districts. I think Tri County is going to be one to turn around. Not trying to be a homer or anything, but I think they'll be able to get a solid start to that district tournament. Reed City as well. So I think especially with the last few weeks here in the regular season. There's going to be what, 1, 2, 3, 4, probably like 10 games and some change left in the very short rest of the season. I think at the end of this month is when the regular season closes up. There's going to be a lot of movement and a lot of different parts that you got to watch out for. But I'm looking forward to the second part with districts and that postseason. And I think a lot of other people are right now. But Big Rapids, it's their conference to lose. And I think you're going to be seeing them get those honors at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Coach Scarpelli, we talked to him earlier on the show on his philosophy, and he's got his team really every multi-tooled asset on the field as possible. A lot of utility guys, a lot of movement in the lineup, and really good fundamentals. They don't commit very many errors, and especially you looked at that Molly Stanwood game, especially in game two. They took care of it in 6 innings in game one, and game two got really close. Big Rapids only won 4-2, and you look at where Molly Stanwood was, especially in game two. I mean, they scored the first run in that ball game, and you're looking and you're saying, man, they're a really good team. I mean, they got some really good athletes on that team. Devin Garbo has played some really good baseball. He's going to be an all-conference nominee for sure. I mean, you got a lot of other guys as well. Grondick's been great at the top of the order for that team. So you see a lot of what they are doing, and you're seeing a lot of good things from Moy Stanwood. The problem is that they've just had some errors. They had 5 errors in game one against the Cards, and then they had 3 in game two. And if you don't commit those errors, I believe at least 1 or 2 of them, from talking to Coach Scarpelli, resulted in scoring runs in that inning. So you take those away, they're right in the ball game. And you look at them as a record standpoint. I mean, they're well under 500. But they've played a lot of close games, so they could be a team that might heat up here at the end of the season, and especially with their draw coming up in the district, and especially being there in Division Three, I mean, they might be a team that we're going to have to maybe look twice at before we start making predictions here upcoming in a couple weeks when we're talking about district ball.
Yeah, I like that a lot. We'll move now to softball. Does that sound good, Brandon?
Sure, let's do it.
Big Rapids 15-1. That's kind of the big thing right now. They've been really dealing it so far. Especially against Kent City. I mean, they almost had that close. They had a close first game with that 2-1, but then picked up in the second game 12-1 to kind of clean that one up. But I think still you're going to see a little bit more movement than people might think. I don't know if Big Rapids is going to lose the conference by any means, seeing that they're just on this tear. But they still have Reed City coming up in the schedule. As well as some other tough non-conference opponents. I think Nuevo at the end of the year too, which is not a bad team, 11-5 as well. So I think you're going to see just a little bit more surprise games for them, but still Big Rapids, it's kind of the same story. We talked about it last week. They're kind of on the top of the table. It's their conference to lose on both baseball and softball end.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when you're looking at the battle of Big Rapids and Reed City, obviously next week is where it's going to all go down, and we're going to know who's going to be the top team really after next week. But I think when you look at Big Rapids, I mean, you're talking about having, how good Marissa Warren has been. Fantastic. She has just been lights out all year long. Kayla Noop as well has been great for that team, and Coach Thompson. I mean, they have both tools, both pitching and hitting, and the fielding is certainly enough to suffice to really win these ball games. I mean, Reed City especially too. I mean, you have
1-3 Reed City is.
You're looking at their offense right now and you're saying, whoa, this is some major damage. I mean, we're talking, unfortunately, on your side against Tri-County, Joe, I mean, we're talking 47 runs compared to 0, and that took 6 innings to settle. I'm sorry I had to bring that up, Joe, but that was just as of Wednesday.
I know you just want to just flex on how good your alma mater is. I get it. I get
just salt in the wound. No, I'm just kidding.
But yeah, I think that Reed City team is going to be the one to kind of go crazy, because although they have a high record, I think just right now based on kind of out of conference and teams that they've played, they haven't had the best success of it. But I still think you're going to have a really, really tough go of it when it comes to, I think next week is when they're going to be playing, and that game's going to decide the conference right there. Because I don't think Big Rapids has lost to a conference opponent yet either this season. So if it's a split, it's going to be a shared. If it's a clean sweep by either one, I'm looking forward to it. But do you want to give a quick prediction by chance, Brandon, who you think is going to be able to take this one?
Oh,
Are you going to be a homer? Are you going to go for the Cards?
I mean, this is tough. You're putting me in a tight spot here, Joe, and I feel like this might be aggressive revenge from my comment a couple seconds ago. But I think right now, if you were looking at betting with the house in consideration, I think you're going to see probably a good percentage that are going to say, maybe 67% are saying that the Cards are going to sweep. And right now, I want Reed City to really be in the mix, and I think we're going to see really some incredible softball. I think right now, Big Rapids is the favorite. I don't think this game is going to be. I think we mentioned it 2 weeks ago when we made these predictions again, and I'm even more now confident that we're going to see a potential split between these two teams. If not, we're going to see 2 games within 2 runs of each other. I just don't see a way that it gets away from either team, because both teams have showed resilience, and I think that's the biggest thing. They've been able to take care of their business against teams that frankly, are just not quite to their level yet. And, the good teams, they play up to their level every single week. They don't play up or down to competition. They play at their level every week. And you see that from both of these teams. And they're taking care of these games, quickly moving on. Next game, let's go. And that's the mentality both coaches have had, Coach D, Coach Thompson on each side. So I think this is going to be a heck of a game. I'm going to say right now, you might say, well, this is probably, you could even hit a snooze button on a sound effect if you wanted to. I think we're going to see a split between these two teams. And I think we're going to have to dive into the record differentials, the overall records in order to settle this thing. And we're going to see a lot of interesting conversations that will be had just based on if we were to give an outright champion. Otherwise, they're going to be as co-CSAA champions, which, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm sure both teams would be happy. But I think if you ask both coaches and both teams, they want the sweep next week and they want it all to themselves.
Yeah, and the thing to look at it too, you talked about they get their business done quick, both teams. Reed City, last 10 games, 7 of them have been called from run rule. 6 of those games for Big Rapids out of the last 10 have been called for run rule. So it's going to be 2 high-powered offenses meeting each other, and that usually means one of 2 things. It's either going to be an absolute race to the end, who's going to be able to get the bats to fire up the quickest, or it's going to be a pitching battle. That's usually what we see with 2 very high-powered offenses. They put their best stuff against each other, and, sometimes they're just not ready for it. So I'm looking forward to I'm kind of hoping that's a little bit of a change up. Who's going to be able to have that type of mentality when the bats aren't going as well to be able to just grind it out and get the win. But statistics show it's probably going to be a pretty high-scoring affair, maybe 6-7 runs apiece. But I'm hoping that it's going to be a close game, both of those matchups, because that's just going to make it so much more fun for us to talk about and kind of relay that next week when we talk about this game. But I'm looking forward to it. It's in Big Rapids, Brandon. You want to go? You want to go take a look at it every once in a while, or go check it out?
Well, let's see. I'm looking at my watching my count. I'm free, so I think we should go watch some good ball, man.
4 and
This thing is
6
fun.
p.m. 4 and 6 p.m. at the Big Rapids High School softball field. If you want to go check that out, that's going to be 2 very good teams playing that. It's basically for the conference tournament as well. So I'm going to ride with Reed City. I'm a rock with them. I think the Coyotes are going to come out of nowhere. But that's probably it for CSAA talk. I think that's people are probably sick of us talking about that type of stuff. Tigers baseball?
Yeah, sure. I'll add one more thing though. I think when you look at that matchup, especially for those, I think the matchup that we're going to see is how we're going to see the Cardinal Aces on the mound, especially like Kalen Noop. How are they going to dissect that Reed City lineup? Because there's a lot of power in the bat. You're talking with Enos. You're talking about with Morgan Hammond. I mean, they have a really good heart of the order. So I think that's going to be the side that we're going to be watching the most. And I think this will play in favor, especially for Reed City, if they put up more runs. I think a higher run total game will play into their advantage as opposed to a low run scoring battle where it's more of a pitcher's duel. I think you'd have to favor Big Rapids in that scenario, but it's going to be very interesting. I am very looking much forward to it, but really kind of correlating that here in transition, Joe. I mean, the Tigers know how to put the bat to the ball early, but man, they can't hang up. If this was a 7-inning game, they would be one of the best teams in baseball right now. And unfortunately, it's not.
We'd be great. We'd be absolutely great. But Tigers have just not had that as of recently. Sitting there at 19-18, we were like about 5 games above 500 6 games ago, and we have just been not playing super hot. We lost to the Yankees, losing to the Guardians. We got the Astros, I think, on Saturday. So, yeah, wish we could have played a little bit better, not going to lie. But I think there's just a lot of things going on, a lot of conversations that need to be had within the organization. I mean, first with Torkelson, we talked about it last week. AJ Hinch is just going to let him figure it out. He doesn't want to send him down yet, but he's being completely honest with the fan base, which is, I think, something that we have not had in the longest time with, Alavila, with guys, before this kind of new GM and everything took over. We didn't really have that transparency too much. But now, too, sending Parker Meadows down to AAA is just another thing where, going to bring up a new guy, see how it plays out. So I think you're exactly right. If we can just try to play a little bit better and get the runs on the board and just especially the Tuesday game where we put up 11 runs, that's very good. But we just got to make sure that we keep that up all the time because if we can score a lot of runs, we win games. That's pretty much a given so far. But I mean, you look at the game 1 against the Guardians, losing 2-1, losing 5-4 yesterday. It kind of sucks, yeah. But I think it's really just making sure we can make this last as long as possible with just the bats and having that go from start to finish because we mentioned this last week too. Bullpen can only take you so far. It can hold them back, but you just got to step it up as a batter on all facets of the game because we're just not where we need to be at the moment.
Yeah, and you have to give credit to the Guardians. I mean, in the the eighth, ninth, and then obviously the 10th inning to finish it, they just gritted out one across the plate, and that's really how this game is really won and lost. Can you grind a run across the plate when it matters most? And those are the teams that win in the postseason. But I mean, it's really tough because I mean, you look obviously at the box score. And you're looking at some of these stats, and you're looking at the Tigers lineup, and you're saying, man, I mean, 7 hits, 4 runs, that should get the job done. That it really should, especially with how this pitching staff has been. I mean, you're seeing great starting pitching. The bullpen has really kind of been up and down, and that's something that is very noticeable now because they were on fire, obviously, at the early part of the year. Now they're kind of roller coaster going up and down, and that can obviously be kind of a sign of settling in. As far as obviously you're looking at numbers and analytics and seeing how it's going to shape out, the consistency, and now we're starting to see a little bit of those fluctuations, which are more reasonable to assume in the pack of a season, especially 162 games long. And I think especially now showing that the offense. Really, you're scoring some of these big innings, but it shouldn't stop there, right? It should continue onward. You should get 5, 6, 7 across if you can. And we saw the 11, and we're saying, whoa, hello, this is the offense we've been waiting for. But that's only one game in the last 6 that we have scored anywhere above 6, 7 runs. And that's something that has to really have to change, because I mean, we're having some, I mean, how great was Andy Ibanez when he came back 2 days ago and just absolutely obliterated the baseball back in the lineup. Good to have him back. But you can't rely on those big days from individual players every single time you go out there. And that's kind of where this team, I feel like, is really kind of, they're relying on one person so much. And oftentimes it's relying on the bullpen a little bit in these late games, which they really are paid to get the job done. And I'm not trying to necessarily thwart the attention away from there as well. I mean, this is a team effort, right? It's a team game, and that's what you ask everybody in the locker room. And we all lost that game. It wasn't one person. It wasn't 2 people. It was all of us here on the 40 man. If you really aren't looking back at it, but I think especially there's a lot of opportunity, especially I think at the bottom of the lineup. I mean, you're starting to see guys starting to kind of fall down that we were relying on, especially early on in the season. Baez being one of them. Torkelson, obviously, you mentioned Joe, really kind of going down the lineup slowly. Parker Meadows was a guy that was drifting and even starting to exit some of these games early, and that was, I think, a really good thing by AJ Hinch, especially when he was talking about taking down Meadows, was he was just not getting enough. He wasn't getting enough PT to be able to recuperate himself, and we were starting to take him out of games, and that's not fair to him, And I respect him for doing that. And so maybe we see that from Torque if another couple weeks passes and he hasn't gotten any better. And especially when you got some of these really versatility guys that you might be able to throw in these other positions and shift around, like Ibanez. I mean, how good has Wenzel Perez been over really the last couple of weeks? I mean, obviously he had that one big day. He's kind of stagnated since, but I mean, the guy's been especially a really big key to this lineup when we've been able to have him. Getting Gio Urshela back from injury is obviously going to be a big thing, but this bullpen especially, I mean, we're starting to see a little bit more of the inconsistencies there. I mean, Chafin got beat up, especially in that game late on. I believe he was the guy in the ninth that kind of fell it apart a little bit. But it's not just him, right? Alex Lang also had a bad day. We saw Shelby Miller a couple days ago had a blown save. It really happens, and you hate to see these slumps go ahead. But it's just something that's going to have to iron itself out, and that might necessarily mean putting these starting pitchers and letting them go a couple more innings and obviously taking a little bit more of that risk of wear and tear. Or you're going to have to start changing your offense philosophy a little bit to maybe play more small ball in some of these situations, something that we'll monitor with AJ Hinch. But at the end of the day, the Tigers still have a winning record, and we're still on a good trajectory. But obviously, we want to see a little bit more from this team because we know we have it in them.
Yeah, I mean, Tariq Skubal was kind of killing it. I think he was one of the lead pitchers in the AL, which is the best part about this lineup. I mean, you also saw him with 1.9 ERA as well as 4 wins on the season so far, which is great time. I think we just need to see a little bit better performances from some of the other starting pitchers. I mean, you've seen Casey Mize kind of been struggling just a little bit. You also seen Kenta Maeda, who for some reason you just put up three runs on the board basically right when he starts. I mean, if you really wanted to, because he's just not been doing too well. He's got a 6.7 or a 6.8 ERA at the moment, which if you don't know baseball, that's not good. That's not good at all. And for what we're paying him, I mean, it just seems like it's not really getting the job done at all. So don't jump ship. I know I say this every time. Don't jump ship, but maybe start, grab it. Maybe start grabbing onto a lifeboat. before something goes down. Maybe you got like 20 more games until you see how this season goes. But on the bright side, AL Central, we're still in a pretty solid spot, seeing that the AL Central is just absolute dog water this year, which is pretty big. But right now, I think we're 5 games back from the top. So 140 more games left. We're still going to be rocking it. A lot of time left. But we're going to see how it goes. Tigers baseball, just please be good because I miss that very much. And I want you to be able to win a lot of games. And so that way I enjoy being a fan again. So if you're listening, AJ Hinch, figure it out.
I think I got him on speed dial, Joe. We can relay the message if you want to.
Dude, get him on the horn right now because we got to get something going. Especially, okay, when you're leading batting average, or a guy leading your team in batting average is Kerry Carpenter, which no disrespect, he's a great batter. But when you go 269 and that's the best you have on your team, not looking too hot. Especially when a guy like Parker Meadows was at 0.96 average. Then you also got, I think, Javi Baez and Spencer Torkelson. Well, Torkelson's actually not that bad. He's at like 220. So it could be better, could be worse. But when you have, I think, 3 guys in the starting lineup who have a batting average that starts with a 1, something's got to get figured out because it's just not going to do well at all. And that's not going to be the recipe for success. I mean, you mentioned it, maybe switching to a more small ball, kind of being more strategic instead of trying to, get a lot of big base hits and stuff like that. But when the only producers you really have are Mark Canha, Riley Green, and Kerry Carpenter, you're not going to win when you only got 3 guys whose bats are hot. And even so, right now, they're kind of lukewarm, and you just took them out of the microwave, and they're going to get pretty cold here pretty soon. So we'll see how it plays out. I'm still looking forward to see if there's going to be some late game improvements. But Spencer Torkelson, please hit a home run so that way I don't, lose faith in you as well as, just hating being a Tigers fan. That'd be really cool.
That would be pretty cool. Yeah, that's all I got to say after that.
I was say we only got like 20 more games until this is just going to be a complaining session about the Tigers baseball team. And I think
can't do that. Positive
if we
energy,
get,
Joe.
oh, don't worry, I'll have energy for it. All right, I'll have energy for it. But I think if we get 10 games below 500, that's going to be when we got to have some more conversations about everything because, yeah, I'm not even going to open up that can of worms because I could talk for like 20 more minutes. I don't even think we're allotted that much more time in this Zoom meeting. So I don't really think we have much else to talk about. Right, Brandon?
No, I guess before we go as well, we got to take a moment and thank a new partner of the show, Joe. Thanks to Michigan ADAS Calibrations and Glass. Forgot to mention them at the beginning of the show, but of course they're now joining on. They're with us here on this wild journey. So big thanks to them. Of course, mobile service for windshield replacements and vehicle calibrations. Michigan ADAS Calibrations and Glass works on any make and model. You can visit michiganadas.com for more information. And we're glad you guys are joining us here on the ride. And we look forward to bringing you a good show, hopefully each and every week that me and Joe try hard on. But obviously, we know sometimes it's not the best show, but you know what they say, Joe? The show must go on.
Absolutely. And a lot of improvements, are coming your way. So it's going to be a good time. Have a great weekend. Brandon, it's been fun. I'll be seeing you next week. And I can't wait to bring more action for you. CSAA is heating up. Tigers baseball may be cooling down, but we'll see how it plays out. Brandon, it's been a good one.
It's been a good one. See you, everybody.